So before starting this video, I have a very deep and philosophical question for you. What color shirt am I wearing? Now, you may think that's not a very deep question, and you'd be right. But just like actual deep questions about God or life, everyone is going to have a different answer without one thing: light. And now the answer is clear. In chapter 6, we start to wade into some of the deeper subjects of the Creed. We're talking about the nature of divinity, the Holy Trinity. This isn't a subject to be taken lightly, but it also isn't impossible to understand. What we know of God determines how we see and respond to everything around us, just like light in a dark room. As Christians, we're told to walk in the light as Jesus is in the light. In fact, Jesus is the light of the world. So the question is, how do we walk in that light? Chapter 6 is about God, but it's also about us, specifically what happens when we encounter God for ourselves. That's the context of the opening quote by Gregory Palamas. One should perhaps call it union and not knowledge. The it that Gregory is referring to is everything we do as Christians: pray, read, go to church. And Gregory is saying that the purpose of all these things isn't just to know more about God, it's to be close to God, to experience God as he really is, until that experience of God unites us with God and causes us to be like him. This is the argument in Gregory's book, The Triads. And I'll be honest, it's not the easiest read. Gregory wrote the Triads in response to a fellow Christian who believed that God, as he really is unknowable and unexperiential, if that's a word. Either way, it totally tipped Gregory off. The Triads is one giant mic drop by Gregory, where he insists, like Paul did, that I know whom I have believed. But Gregory didn't just know God. He'd been in his presence, and that time soaking in his presence changed his life. It's kind of like the time a few years ago that I went camping along the Central California coast. I spent way too much time in the ocean, forgot to put on sunscreen, and you can guess from a complexion like mine what happened. It was the worst sunburn of my life. For the next week, everyone I met kept saying, "Mark, you have a sunburn." And I wanted to punch them in the nose. I thought, I know I have a sunburn. I look like a tomato. But then I started thinking, my time in the sun changed me until everyone I met could tell the difference. Remember when Moses went up Mount Sinai and came back after spending 40 days in God's presence? It changed him. His face glowed so brightly that he had to cover up. What if what we knew of God did the same? What if instead of trying to define love, grace, mercy, or any other divine attribute, we started living it? What if we basked in these attributes and lived and acted on them until they radiated from us? That's the theme for chapter 6. The Nicene Creed calls Jesus light of light. If you spend enough time in the light, it will change you. You don't have to know how fast it travels, how far it's come, or even try that hard to get a sunburn. All you have to do is soak it in. And one last thing. If you're familiar with the history of the Creed, you may wonder why chapter 6 skips over the phrase, "one essence with the Father." It was very difficult for me to leave this phrase out of the chapter. One essence was the issue at the heart of the Arian controversy and the whole reason for the Council of Nicaea. But my hope is that before we get into the details of the incarnation in the coming chapters, we can stop for a moment and be amazed, like the early church was, at the light of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ.